A haze of acrid smoke curls through the narrow laboratory, winding like a living thing around stone walls that have forgotten the touch of sunlight. The air is thick and oppressive, as if each inhalation drags a chain of fire across the lungs, carrying the metallic tang of mercury and the pungent bite of sulfur. Candlelight flickers, casting shadows that dance along the rough-hewn floor, where scattered parchment lies smudged and curling at the edges, ink bleeding into acid stains that speak of experiments both desperate and damned. A scholar bends over a copper alembic, gaunt and trembling, the brass joints catching the light like tiny beacons of forbidden promise. Droplets of a silvery substance cling to the spout, catching his eye with a glint that hints at both salvation and doom. Outside, the wind howls against latticed windows, a mournful voice threading through the corridors of the monastery beyond. Each gust carries whispers from cloistered halls, whispers that warn of folly, of knowledge meant not for the living. The scholar does not hear them. His mind is consumed by the flicker of possibility, the tantalizing shimmer of transmutation, the seductive notion that base metals might bend to his will, that flesh and spirit might rise above their mortal cage. His hands shake, fingers scorched and blistered, bearing the map of his obsession upon his skin. Yet he reaches for another vial, the promise of gold burning in his vision like a fevered sun. The tower itself seems to shiver with the scholar's obsession. Stone walls pulse in the candlelight, as though breathing with anticipation, or perhaps with dread. In a corner, a small cage rattles. A bird, feathers dulled by dust and neglect, eyes bright with silent judgment. Its fragile heartbeat echoes the rhythm of the scholar's own, a warning drowned beneath the fever of ambition. He bends closer to the crucible, where a faint green glow begins to rise, coiling upward like smoke made alive, whispering secrets that should never be spoken. Reflected in a pool of mercury, his own visage twists and shivers, distorted, unnatural, a cruel mirror of the path he has chosen. Time bends in this room, each second stretching into an eternity of anticipation. He consults the fragile parchment scrolls at his side, scrawled with diagrams that resemble both angelic sigils and demonic seals, each symbol a key to a gate perhaps better left unentered. The candle gutters in the cold draft, a hesitant heartbeat of light in the darkness, throwing long, trembling shadows across the floor. The air is alive with tension. The faint crackle of fire against metal quiet him to the hubris of men. Even the stones seem to shiver, knowing the boundaries he teeters upon, the razor's edge between revelation and ruin. He whispers to himself, not in prayer, but in the litany of obsession, a chant of elements, a song of the alchemist's yearning. Gold, power, life eternal. Each word tastes of ash upon his tongue, a bitter promise that coexists with the threat of death. Droplets of mercury slide across the rim of the alembic, pooling like liquid mirrors, capturing glimpses of things that should not exist, contorted visions of flesh, echoes of immortality gone awry. He is blind to the subtle tremors that creep along his own limbs, the unnatural stiffness settling into joints and sinew. The first cruel gestures of a body reshaped by ambition and neglect. A distant bell tolls from the monastery, each sonorous note reverberating through stone halls like a summons from unseen judgment. It is not a warning, not yet, only a herald, a metronome against which the scholar's mind races faster, faster, chasing the impossible. His eyes dart between crucible and scroll, between cage and candle, and he does not see the shadow that stretches toward him across the floor. It moves not with him, but against him, a silent echo of the perils that lurk beyond the limits of man's understanding. Every vibration of metal, every hiss of heated liquid, every curling wisp of smoke is a note in a symphony of obsession and dread. He dips a trembling hand into the crucible, lifting a liquid that seems to hum with life, a green fire suspended in mercury. It moves like smoke in glass, both fluid and unyielding, and he inhales, savoring the scent that smells of earth, decay, and eternity all at once. A cough rips through him, bitter and wet, yet he does not recoil. He is a man possessed, each heartbeat a hammer upon the anvil of his ambition. The bird in its cage hisses, feathers bristling, and for a brief instant he sees in its eyes a reflection of his own fate. A prisoner of his desires, small, trapped, helpless against forces far greater than intellect or will. As night deepens, the tower's silence becomes suffocating, broken only by the occasional hiss of liquid meeting metal, the faint groan of timbers contracting in the cold, and the scholar's own ragged breathing. The green glow rises, casting shapes along the walls, monsters of imagination, or perhaps glimpses of reality itself bending to his hand. He reaches for another scroll, the parchment soft beneath his fingertips, inscribed with characters that seem to writhe in anticipation. Each symbol carries weight beyond comprehension, a memory of all who tried before him and failed, of all who sought the same immortality and paid the toll in flesh, in reason, in soul. Suddenly, a sharp tremor runs through the alembic. Droplets scatter, falling onto the stone floor with a hiss, their impact ringing like the toll of doom. The scholar freezes, hands hovering over the crucible, sensing the first real fracture in the fragile cage of his hubris. Pain blooms in his fingers, creeping upward, unnatural, insistent. The reflection in mercury ripples violently, no longer a mirror, but a prelude, a warning of the transformation that awaits him. The candle flickers, guttering low, and the tower seems to exhale, as if the stones themselves are aware that the scholar has crossed a line from which there is no return. He collapses to one knee, gasping, the room spinning, filled with green light and acrid smoke. Each breath is a dagger, each heartbeat a drum of approaching madness. His eyes wander to the bird, whose small, steady gaze pierces him more sharply than any vision of gold or eternal life ever could. The world narrows to the hiss of the crucible, the creak of floorboards, and the intolerable knowledge that his flesh will soon betray him as completely as his mind has. The first contortions ripple along his limbs, subtle, grotesque, a cruel prelude that promises not triumph, but mutation. He clenches the edges of his table, knuckles whitening, praying silently not for salvation, but only for understanding, though he fears the answer will be unbearable. Outside, the wind continues its mournful song, carrying through the monastery corridors the echoes of folly and defiance. The distant bell tolls again, each strike a punctuation to the scholar's descent, a reminder that time marches on even as he loses himself to the unnatural. Shadows cling to the walls, green and flickering, wrapping around stones and beams as if the tower itself mourns, or mocks, the hubris contained within. The room vibrates with the rhythm of alchemical pursuit, the fever of ambition that bends the boundaries of flesh, fire, and spirit. And in that moment, as candlelight falters and the green glow rises like some vengeful spirit, the scholar glimpses the truth. Not immortality awaits him, nor the golden triumph he imagined, but a transformation wrought from obsession, an irreversible alteration of his own body and soul. He trembles, shivering as the first signs of mutation spread across his skin, subtle yet undeniable, a silent herald of horrors yet to come. The tower holds its breath, the bird still watches, and beyond the stone walls, the world waits, oblivious, patient, cruel in its inevitability. The night stretches on, cold and unyielding, as the scholar's cry is swallowed by stone, smoke, and fire. And as the candle guttering low fights the draft one last time, the green light pulses, steady, inexorable, an eternal testament to human curiosity's most dangerous path. Within these walls, knowledge and ambition have collided, and only silence answers. The journey is far from over, the consequences yet unseen, but one truth endures. In the pursuit of the forbidden, nothing is sacred, and everything is transformed. The laboratory sits atop a crumbling tower, its stones etched with centuries of frost and neglect. Outside, the courtyard lies frozen beneath a brittle sky, the skeletal oaks stretched wide like the hands of mourners reaching for something lost. Frost clings to their branches in jagged, spectral fingers, and each exhalation of wind carries the faint murmur of the past, ghostly footsteps of monks long vanished, leaving behind only echoes of chants swallowed by time. The world beyond this tower is muted, shivering beneath winter's dominion, and yet within, a fire burns, not of warmth, but of obsession. In the center of the room, a thin figure bends over a tray of instruments, draped in a robe darkened by soot and the stains of countless experiments. His hands, blackened and scarred by contact with lead, arsenic, and other alchemical poisons, move with the precision of a man who has lived more in theory than in life. He lifts a vial toward the candlelight, and for a moment, the flame fractures through the liquid, scattering colors across the glass. In that iridescent shimmer, he sees not water or mercury, but the reflection of ambition itself, the desire to conquer nature, to reverse decay, to wrest the secrets of life from the clutches of mortality. His eyes linger, unblinking, the warmth of the candlelight casting tremulous shadows across a face etched with hunger, curiosity, and the faint tremor of fear. Around him, the room breathes. Retorts and crucibles, their brass edges dulled but still gleaming with a faint, spectral gleam, catch the light like sentinels of forgotten knowledge. Pestles and mortars sit ready, silent witnesses to triumphs and failures long past. A tray of half-burned scrolls smolders quietly in the corner, the ink curling as if in mourning, blackened curls rising like smoke from a pyre, carrying the faint scent of charred parchment. And beneath it all, a subtle, persistent note. The birdcage rattling in the corner, the small creature inside raising a plaintive cry that echoes off the vaulted ceiling. Its sound is a dirge, a fragile reminder of the weight of mortality, of life confined, of time that will not pause for ambition. The alchemist steps carefully among the tools of his obsession, but one misstep changes everything. Mercury spills across the oaken floor, hissing as it eats into the wood, a serpent of silver slithering toward destruction. The vapor rises swiftly, sulphurous and suffocating, curling around him like a living thing, pressing into his lungs, into his veins. He coughs violently, staggering, the first signs of transformation already rippling through him. A finger twitches unnaturally, small sparks of metal glint beneath the skin, and the shimmer of life itself seems to distort before his eyes. His reflection in a copper basin tilts, warps, becomes alien. The man staring back at him is no longer fully human, yet he cannot tear himself away. There is no turning back, no retreat from the precipice onto which he has climbed. He whispers formulas under his breath, a tongue of fire and dust, syllables that make the air vibrate with possibility. Each word carries the weight of destiny, each motion the risk of annihilation. Candle flames tremble in response, their flickering shadows stretching across the walls like silent witnesses to hubris. The metallic scent of mercury laces with brimstone, scorched parchment, and something else, something sharp and sweet, the tang of power being wrested from the natural order. Every object in the room, every scroll, vial, and rod, seems suddenly alive, a co-conspirator in his dangerous endeavor. The very air hums with anticipation, or perhaps with warning. Outside, the wind tears through the parapets, shattering the fragile calm of the frozen courtyard. It lifts flakes of frost from the stone, hurling them like tiny shards of crystal against the windows. The branches of the oak scrape against the tower walls, a chorus of creaks and groans that speaks of centuries of endurance and collapse. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolls, muffled and uncertain, its voice swallowed by the storm and the night. The alchemist does not notice. He is lost in his creation, a world within a world, where every reaction, every color shift, and every hissing vapor promises revelation or annihilation. He reaches for another vial, this one a strange shade of green, thick as honey, yet quivering with latent energy. His hands shake, partly with exertion, partly with fear, partly with the knowledge that he is dancing at the edge of mortality. The substance glows faintly, as if it knows the destiny that awaits him. He adds a drop to a simmering mixture in a copper crucible, and the reaction is immediate. A plume of silver smoke erupts, filling the chamber with the scent of iron and ozone. His breath catches, eyes watering, the light reflecting off his veins like molten metal. He hears a whisper in that smoke, faint as a prayer or a curse, indistinguishable from the sighs of the wind. Time begins to fracture. Moments stretch and warp. Shadows elongate, twisting around the stone pillars and wooden beams as if alive. The alchemist's body, already marked by the first wave of transformation, begins to pulse with a rhythm that is not entirely his own. His reflection in the basin ripples like disturbed water, showing glimpses of what he might become. A creature of both flesh and element, a master of life, yet prisoner of his own ambition. And still, he presses on, driven by the promise of knowledge, by the intoxicating illusion of control. A sound breaks the spell, a soft, almost human sigh from the bird in the corner. Its eyes, bright and terrified, meet his for an instant. He feels a pang of recognition, a flash of something long buried beneath the obsession. Empathy, regret, fear. Yet it is fleeting. The alchemist is already beyond such mortal restraint. He kneels over his instruments again, adjusting a flame, stirring a vessel with a trembling hand. The room is alive now, breathing in unison with his pulse, each reaction a heartbeat, each exhalation a whisper of fate. The night stretches on, long and unbroken, the tower isolated against the frozen world outside. Frost creeps along the window sills like slow-moving fingers, but inside, warmth and fire come not from stone or air, but from the fever of intellect and madness. The alchemist's eyes gleam in the dim light, reflecting a world that is not yet born, a secret that exists only in the fragile suspension between creation and destruction. The smell of scorched paper and chemicals hangs thick, a tangible aura of obsession that clings to skin and clothing alike. Every sound, every flicker of shadow, every hissing vial is amplified by the tension of discovery and danger. And then, at last, a moment of stillness. The smoke clears slightly, revealing the copper basin once more. His reflection is no longer fully familiar. There is power in that alien gaze, yes, but there is also the first hint of fear. He knows, instinctively, that he stands on the knife's edge between triumph and ruin. The tower itself seems to acknowledge this moment, its stones groaning and settling as if to whisper caution, or perhaps warning. Outside, the wind dies to a whisper, and the frost glints one last time before the moon slips behind clouds, leaving the courtyard in ghostly shadow. He breathes deeply, inhaling the scent of lead, brimstone, and smoldering parchment, and for a heartbeat, he allows himself a flicker of doubt. But it is quickly swallowed by the larger hunger that has driven him for so many years. To stop now would be to abandon a lifetime of pursuit. To falter is to surrender to the ordinary, the human, the mortal. And so he steels himself, eyes narrowing, hands trembling but steadying over the crucible. The night is far from over. In the quiet aftermath, as the shadows stretch across the vaulted chamber, the tower holds its breath. Every object, every drop of chemical, every curl of smoke is a witness. The alchemist moves again, precise and relentless, unaware that the course he has set will mark him forever, either as a master of creation or as a victim of his own dangerous craft. The frost outside glimmers faintly, the oaks reach toward the sky like skeletal sentinels, and the wind carries the faintest murmur of monks long gone, a chorus that will bear witness to what is yet to unfold. And in that suspended, trembling moment, the tower and its lone occupant hang in balance, poised between revelation and ruin, silence and the scream of discovery, as if the world itself waits to see which path he will claim. A candle flickers in the vaulted chamber, its flame trembling as though caught between fear and resolve. Smoke coils in delicate spirals, twisting like restless phantoms around the cold stone pillars, casting fleeting shadows that crawl across the floor like living things. The air is thick with a pungent symphony, the acrid bite of burning herbs, the metallic tang of powdered metals, and the faint, bitter whisper of quicksilver hanging like a secret over every surface. The scholar crouches over a simmering crucible, its copper body etched with centuries of alchemical symbols, worn smooth by the persistence of hands that have traced these lines through endless nights of toil. His eyes glint with a fevered focus, pupils dilated as if peering not at the materials before him, but through them into some hidden architecture of the universe. Outside, the wind lashes against the tower, rattling shutters and scattering frost across the cold stone floor. It presses like a ghostly hand against the walls, a reminder that beyond these walls, the world continues, indifferent to the peril brewing within. The chamber, by contrast, is alive with intent, with obsession. Scrolls lie strewn across the floor, some curling at the edges, some pressed flat beneath the weight of ancient knowledge. Inked symbols shimmer faintly in the candlelight, promising mastery over life and death, a transmutation of the base into the divine. Each parchment seems to hum, a silent chorus urging him onward, daring him to see what mortal men were never meant to witness. His hands, blistered and trembling, move with a ritual precision that has become second nature. Powders are sifted like sacred dust, acids dripped with trembling care, each reaction sending up little explosions of steam, hissed whispers of chemical discontent. The crucible glows warmly at first, then unnaturally, the light crawling along the copper in glimmers that seem almost alive, reflecting in his eyes like molten prophecy. A rat scurries across the shadowed corner, squeaking softly, swallowed by the crackling of fire and the low, ceaseless hiss of his experiments. A small, silent witness to a man teetering on the brink of something vast and incomprehensible. Hours pass, or perhaps minutes. In this cathedral of smoke and fire, time is a meaningless concept. Candle flames burn low, throwing long shadows that twist and fold like serpents along the vaulted ceiling. The scholar's breath comes in shallow bursts, lungs tasting the bitter tang of his work, yet he cannot stop. Each motion, each careful addition of powder or drop of acid, is both a prayer and a challenge. He whispers words under his breath, ancient syllables plucked from manuscripts so old they seem to pulse with their own secret life. And then, almost imperceptibly, the first signs of consequence appear. A tremor runs through his arm, subtle but insistent, as if his body itself is rebelling against the transgressions of his mind. In the metal basin, his reflection wavers, distorted in ways that are not natural. The lines of his face bend and stretch, shadows pooling where they should not, flickering like an echo of some deeper, hidden form. He does not stop. He cannot. The desire to glimpse the divine secrets hidden in matter has become an obsession, a fever with a rhythm of its own, a drumbeat that drives him forward even as he senses the cost growing heavier. Smoke mingles with chemical fumes, curling in serpentine spirals, a tangible manifestation of the unseen forces he seeks to command. The chamber seems to breathe along with him, a living cathedral of stone and copper and fire, alive with the pulse of ambition and terror intertwined. The crucible now glows with an unnatural light, a pale, almost spectral radiance that throws a shadow across the walls in monstrous exaggeration. The heat is palpable, yet not merely from the fire. It radiates from the knowledge he seeks, from the unholy communion of human curiosity and the hidden laws of the universe. A sudden tremor passes through him, stronger this time, and he falters, nearly dropping the crucible. The powders shift, spilling like miniature landslides across the cold stone floor, and a sharp hiss erupts as the chemicals meet with an unforgiving intensity. He catches the edge of the basin with scorched fingers, skin splitting under the heat, yet even pain is no deterrent. There is no turning back. He is bound now to the path he has carved through centuries of human understanding, each step forward a descent into a labyrinth of both wonder and horror. As night deepens, the transformation begins in earnest. Flesh tingles, then shifts imperceptibly, sinews tightening and loosening in patterns foreign to the natural body. His bones hum with a resonance that is not his own, a vibration that speaks of forces older than kingdoms and kings. He touches his face and recoils. His features are familiar and yet not, as though the laws of human symmetry have begun to unravel under the pressure of forbidden insight. And yet, amid the fear, a spark of triumph ignites. He is witnessing the invisible, bending matter to his will, stepping into a realm that few have ever dared approach. The crucible hisses, a voice of its own, casting liquid gold that wavers between the tangible and the ethereal. Shadows dance across the walls, elongating into grotesque shapes, grotesque yet beautiful, reflecting the inner tumult of a man caught between mortality and transcendence. The scholar feels a pull, an almost magnetic attraction to the luminous liquid, as if it calls to him, not with words, but with a promise of power, of ultimate understanding. He leans closer, inhaling the acrid, intoxicating scent, feeling the edges of his mind blur into the smoke. Outside, the wind cries against the tower, rattling the shutters with a mournful insistence, a reminder that the world beyond remains unchanged, untouched by the convulsions of the human spirit within. Frost forms intricate patterns on the cold stones, delicate and transient, like a memory of perfection. The scholar moves, each step deliberate, each breath a study in control. Yet control is slipping, as if the very air conspires to remind him that mastery comes at a price. And then it happens. A shiver courses through him, deeper than any tremor of the arm or flicker of reflection, an echo of overreach. His body begins to betray him, reshaping in ways that are both miraculous and horrifying, a reminder that some knowledge carries a cost far greater than gold. The air itself seems to hold its breath, waiting as he confronts the first true consequence of his ambition. He realizes in a quiet, almost reverent terror that he is no longer merely observing transformation. He is becoming it. The chamber hums with the mingled fragrance of fire, metal, and altered flesh, a cathedral alive with the echoes of forbidden power. Candlelight and chemical glow dance across walls and scrolls, illuminating the obsession and terror that have consumed him. Frost gathers in fragile, intricate lace upon the monastery windows, each crystal a silent testament to the long, bitter nights endured within these walls. The air is thick with the scent of iron and damp stone, a cold that seeps into the marrow, stubborn and unyielding. Inside the high tower, the world feels suspended, caught between candlelight and shadow, between the whisper of knowledge and the thread of its cost. A scholar kneels over a scarred oak table, the surface groaning under centuries of hands that reach for secrets and vanished into the smoke of their own ambition. His fingers brush the rough grain, tracing the grooves left by those who dare before him. Each mark a warning and a temptation. Candles gutter in the draught, their flames quivering as if in fear, casting tremulous halos over brass retorts and glass vials. They shimmer, fragile rainbows trapped in mercury, suspended between promise and peril. The scholar lifts one delicate flask, marveling at the liquid within, imagining the transformations it might bear. Lead to gold, dust to life, mortality undone by a single drop. The stone walls themselves seem to pulse with memory. Memories of colleagues who disappeared in sudden fire or in quiet agony, leaving behind only whispers, cryptic notes, and the faint scent of scorched parchment. Each echo presses against him, urging and warning in the same breath. A bell tolls from the monastery far below, deep and indifferent, a reminder that time marches on, heedless of ambition or fear. The scholar's hands tremble, not from cold, but from the intoxicating thrill of forbidden knowledge. Powders are measured with obsessive care, herbs ground to dust, and each addition hisses and spits when it meets the bubbling concoction. The air shimmers with the acrid tang of transformation, metallic and alive. With every stir, the room grows heavier, thick with anticipation and dread. The alchemy is no longer a pursuit of art or science. It is a ritual, a covenant with the unknown that demands more than it ever promises to give. Outside, the wind lashes against the tower, rattling shutters, scattering snow like restless spirits. Distant cries of startled birds cut through the chill, fragile echoes of life that feel both far away and impossibly close. Inside, the scholar is alone, yet surrounded by a congregation of shadows that twist along stone walls. They stretch and merge with the smoke, forming fleeting faces and whispered voices, accusing, enticing, reminding him of the thin line between genius and madness. His reflection, once steady in the polished copper of a retort, begins to ripple and distort, as if the very air conspires against him, reshaping the world into something unrecognizable. Hours pass, or is it minutes? The bell tolls again and again, but he no longer notes the time. Only the pulse of the experiment drives him, a relentless rhythm that hammers in his veins. Each addition, each careful adjustment, pulls him deeper into the web of his own desire. The powders sizzle and spit, the liquid shifts color and density, and faint, almost imperceptible vapors rise like spirits, curling toward the ceiling. They carry a scent of iron, of ozone, of something older than memory itself. The tower seems to hum in response, a low resonance that presses against his skull, reminding him that he is both master and servant to forces he scarcely understands. The scholar feels it then, the subtle change in his body, a stiffness creeping into his flesh, muscles tightening beyond command, the pulse, a furious drum that seems to echo in his chest and head alike. He notices the transformation in his hands first, the tremors no longer his own, but something other, as if the very essence of the experiment reaches out, threading through his veins. Fear flares, a spark too late. He cannot stop, cannot turn away, for the hunger that brought him here is insatiable, a fire that consumes thought and reason alike. The ambition that once burned bright now devours him, whispering promises and threats in the same breath, each indistinguishable from the other. The tower grows silent except for the experiment and the scholar's ragged breath. Shadows coil and writhe, no longer simple shapes cast by candlelight, but dark forms alive with the intent of the unknown. Smoke dances with them, a partner in this grim waltz, and a metallic scent of transformation fills every corner, pressing into his lungs, his mind, his very sense of self. A memory surfaces, a friend, a fellow seeker of knowledge, vanished here years before, and yet in that vanishing, left a message written only in fear and ash. The scholar realizes with a sudden, chilling clarity that the same fate now reaches toward him. Not a choice, but a sentence delivered by his own hand, or perhaps by the alchemy itself. His eyes fix on the mercurial sheen in the flask, the rainbow of impossible promise, and he sees beyond it the truth of his own ambition. Knowledge, he understands, is never free. It demands blood, or mind, or soul. And in the relentless pursuit of this dream, this godlike mastery of matter and spirit, he has become the vessel for forces he cannot contain. The mixture bubbles, hisses, and grows in intensity, reflecting back not just his image, but his deepest desire, twisted and monstrous. He feels the creeping inevitability, a metamorphosis that begins in the flesh, spreads to the mind, and roots itself in the marrow of his being. The wind outside rises, shrieking against the stone, rattling the tower with an elemental anger that mirrors the storm within. The scholar reaches to adjust the retort, but the hand that once held certainty now quivers, uncertain, alien. Every instinct screams to flee, to undo the past hours, but the hunger of forbidden knowledge is stronger than fear. The flame flickers, guttering violently as the room fills with a haze of silver vapor. Shapes dance in the fog, faces of the past, warnings unheeded, lives consumed by the very curiosity that now claims him. Finally, as the bell tolls once more, this time distant, ghostly, an echo swallowed by cold, the scholar realizes the irreversible truth. The power he sought to command now commands him. The transformation is complete in its inevitability. Body, mind, soul, all bending to the will of the experiment, all marked by the cruel hand of ambition. He looks at his reflection in the copper once more, and it is no longer him alone. It is the alchemy itself, a living testament to the cost of reaching too far, too fast, too desperately. And in that moment, the tower holds its breath. The frost clings to the windows, the candles gutter and sigh, and the wind rattles the shutters with mournful persistence. Beyond the glass, the monastery sleeps, oblivious to the human ambition unraveling above. Inside, the scholar stands, transformed, yet painfully aware that he is no longer the master of his fate. Only the faint echo of human striving remains, a whisper amid the ruin of dreams, the fleeting glimmer of what was sought, and the terrifying clarity of what was gained. The night deepens, the fire sputters low, and the tower waits, patient, indifferent, eternal. The first light of dawn creeps through narrow slits in the stone tower, a trembling shard of silver brushing across the cold, dust-choked floor. It falls upon a chamber thick with the smell of brimstone, scorched parchment, and the subtle, acrid tang of disturbed metals. The air shivers, carrying the faint call of a crow from the battlements above, a messenger of warnings the scholar refuses to heed. The tower itself seems alive, the stones groaning under centuries of wind and frost, as if mourning the knowledge sought within its walls. Hunched over a table that bears the weight of obsession, the scholar moves with careful precision. Instruments, arranged like sacred relics, catch the feeble candlelight. Brass retorts gleaming with a dim, almost otherworldly glow. Glass alembics, clouded with the residue of countless trials, and small copper basins reflecting flames that tremble as though anticipating disaster. Each addition of mercury or powdered metal hisses into the crucible, a whisper of judgment echoing through the vaulted chamber, as though the walls themselves bear witness to his defiance of nature's quiet laws. His fingers, pale and streaked with soot, tremble, not from cold, but from the weight of knowledge pressing against fragile flesh. A droplet of mercury spills from a trembling hand, catching the light in a cruel mimicry of gold. He stares into it, and for a moment, the reflection seems almost alive. The molten surface distorts his face, twisting the familiar into something grotesque. Eyes that have seen too many nights of candlelit study peer back, half human, half reflection, and he wonders, if he continues, which image will claim dominion. The one in the mirror or the one in the world outside. Tales rise unbidden in his mind. Colleagues lost to nights like these, their ambitions frozen in cruel mimicry, twisted limbs, mottled flesh, minds undone. He remembers the apprentice who had vanished after 3 long nights, leaving behind only the faintest trace of a manuscript and a scorched crucible, a warning written in smoke. Yet he persists, drawn by the shimmer of possibility, the fragile, fleeting gleam of discovery that dances at the edges of danger, teasing the imagination with a promise too intoxicating to resist. The air thickens. Each breath is a struggle, laden with acrid chemicals reacting in ways even he cannot fully predict. Vision blurs as fumes curl through the chamber, clinging to lungs, eyes, and the hair matted against his brow. The candle flames flicker as though afraid to witness the unfolding experiment, casting shadows that twist along the stone walls like whispering phantoms. A cage rattles violently in a darkened corner, a small bird inside flapping frantically against its bars, sensing the peril that seems to drip from every surface. Its cries pierce the stagnant air, sharp as knives, a silent chorus of accusation. He pauses, fingers suspended over the crucible, inhaling the dense, metallic scent. The scholar is no stranger to danger. He has felt it seep into bones and marrow, tasted it in the bitter tang of burned metals, heard it in the silence that falls suddenly, like a heavy cloth draping the world. Yet the allure of transmutation, the dream of unraveling creation itself, is a siren that knows no mercy. Each experiment is a gamble with fate, a delicate negotiation with forces that have claimed many before him. And yet he continues, each addition to the crucible a deliberate step closer to an unseen precipice. Candle smoke rises in languid spirals, curling upward like veiled omens. The tower inhales, a slow, mournful breath, pressing the silence down upon him. He feels it in his chest, a heaviness that is not entirely his own. His vision shifts again toward the pool of quicksilver, now churning as if disturbed by invisible hands. He sees himself reflected in fragments, the light bending the lines of his face, his gaze, until he is almost unrecognizable. In this liquid mirror, he glimpses the cost of ambition, not failure alone, but the slow erosion of humanity, the quiet theft of the self by the restless pursuit of forbidden knowledge. The walls seem to lean inward, closing upon him with the weight of countless nights spent in pursuit of what cannot fully be named. There is a rhythm to the hissing of metals, a cadence in the bubbling and foaming of the crucible, as though the elements themselves mock the scholar's arrogance. He thinks of the alchemists who came before, their names whispered in fear, remembered as cautionary tales. And yet, in the shadows of those memories, he finds only fuel, the dream shimmering in the darkness, too bright, too urgent to ignore. He moves again, careful, deliberate, fingers brushing against glass and copper, as if he were tracing the contours of a fragile life. Each motion is calculated, precise, yet there is an undercurrent of madness in his rhythm, a whispered defiance of mortality and law alike. He senses the transformation beginning in subtle ways. His skin itches where acids have burned, his hair smells faintly of sulfur, and his pulse thunders in tandem with the churning reaction. The scholar wonders if he is the master of these substances or merely a vessel through which the alchemy of fate operates. The crow calls again from the battlements, a solitary note cutting through the murk of dawn, and for a heartbeat, the scholar imagines the bird watching him with knowing eyes. It is a silent judge, a herald of the consequences he refuses to acknowledge. Outside, the wind shivers over stone and slate, threading through arrow slits and chimneys, carrying the scent of frost and ruin. Within, the tower holds its breath, anticipating the culmination of hours spent on the knife edge between creation and destruction. Hours pass as if measured by the slow ticking of an invisible clock. The crucible hisses, smoke coils, and the scholar's thoughts drift into the realm of the ethereal. He recalls faces of colleagues, rivals, friends, all drawn to the promise of transformation and lost to it in varying degrees. Some vanished without a trace. Some returned with eyes hollowed by revelation, their speech fragmented, their minds forever altered. And still, he persists, because the gleam of possibility, the tantalizing shimmer of what might be, is a light that refuses to die. The air grows heavier, the candle flames gutter, and the chamber vibrates faintly with the unseen energy of reaction. He leans closer to the crucible, nostrils flaring as the metallic scent thickens. The reflection in the mercury pool stares back now with an intensity that chills him, a subtle distortion, a whisper of warning, or perhaps a glimpse of what he may become. Fingers stiffen, vision blurs further, yet he cannot tear his gaze away. Obsession has entwined itself with every nerve and sinew. The pursuit of knowledge is no longer a choice but a compulsion, a tide against which he cannot swim. A sudden clatter, the cage again, startles him. The bird flutters wildly, wings brushing the cold stone, a frantic reminder that life is fragile, that danger is ever present. He exhales, and the smoke rises like a phantom, curling over the table and instruments, weaving through the tower like a silent lament. In these early hours, the scholar confronts more than failure. He confronts the erosion of self, the creeping transformation that knowledge exacts when sought too eagerly, and the thin, perilous line that separates brilliance from ruin. He straightens, hands trembling, heart hammering against the ribs like a drumbeat of inevitability. Outside, the dawn is slowly breaking, spilling pale light into the world beyond the tower. Yet inside, shadows linger stubbornly, casting long, uncertain forms across the stone floor. The scholar gazes once more into the liquid mirror of mercury, seeing both himself and something alien staring back, a fusion of ambition, madness, and the relentless pursuit of the impossible. Candle smoke rises higher, veiling the scene in gray, softening the edges, muting the harsh truths of transformation in a haze of spectral light. And as the first true sunlight reaches the narrow slit, a question hangs in the still, chemical-laden air. At what cost does knowledge come? And what remains when obsession consumes the hand that seeks to hold it? The tower sighs with centuries of secrets, its stones bearing witness to the sacrifices of those who dared, and the scholar knows, with an unspoken certainty, that the path he treads will leave him changed, forever on the threshold between man and alchemy, between brilliance and ruin, where one misstep could extinguish both. The morning wind threads through the battlements once more, carrying the faint, knowing call of the crow into the awakening world. And in the dim light, amidst hissing metals, curling smoke, and trembling reflections, the scholar continues, driven by a shimmer, a dream, a possibility that refuses to die, stepping into a day where fate curiosity, and obsession are forever entwined. The laboratory smells of rusted metal, scorched parchment, and the faint, bitter tang of chemicals that hiss and steam from crucibles. Shadows twist in the flickering candlelight, crawling across the rough stone walls like living things. The walls themselves seem to hold memory, etched with centuries of experiments that ended in ruin or revelation, their scars a silent warning. Here, every surface hums with the residue of obsession. Charred powders, cracked flasks, smudged diagrams where ink bled into the stone, and notes scribbled in haste, too urgent to be legible to any other eye. The air is thick with the ache of anticipation, each breath tasting of possibility and dread in equal measure. A lone figure moves among the clutter, a scholar draped in a robe singed at the sleeves, him darkened from proximity to flame. Each motion is deliberate, almost ritualistic. Powders sifted, liquids measured with trembling hands, mercury stirred into a dance of silver light. His eyes, wide and fevered, catch the candlelight and reflect the fires of ambition burning within him. They are the eyes of someone who has stared too long into mysteries that were perhaps meant to remain hidden, a witness to the precarious boundary between knowledge and annihilation. Outside, frost glitters across the courtyard, each flake a tiny crystal whispering the indifference of a world that continues without heed of human desire or despair. A soft clatter breaks the rhythm. The single inhabitant of a birdcage perched near the hearth shifts, feathers rustling. The creature watches with unsettling patience, its beady gaze fixed, as if it too understands the gravity of what is unfolding. Scrolls litter the floor, some rolled tightly, others sprawled like fallen soldiers, ink smudged and illustrations smearing into indecipherable shapes. They speak a secret language of metals and stars, alchemical symbols whose meaning has been warped by the passage of decades and the obsessive touch of the scholar's hand. Time itself seems fractured here. From the monastery below, a small bell tolls, its gentle chime threading through the chaos of the chamber. It marks hours with a rhythm at odds with the fevered energy inside this tower, a distant reminder that the world beyond still exists, indifferent to the human hunger for transcendence. Yet the scholar ignores it, or perhaps he listens only to the bell's rhythm as a counterpoint to the internal tumult, the hammering of his pulse, the almost imperceptible tremor of flesh over bone, the twitching of fingers that seem to act with a mind of their own. The crucible at the center of the room glows with a light that seems alive, a molten heart reflecting shadows that shift and grow. Steam rises, curling like spirits from the surface, carrying with it the scent of unknown reaction. The alchemist leans closer, face lit by the reddish glow, and watches the mercury respond, its surface breaking and rippling as if alive, whispering back the secret of his ambition. He senses it already. The transformation is beginning, subtle but inexorable. The fire's heat is no longer confined to the vessel alone. It has seeped into his veins, tracing the fragile lines of his mortality with the same merciless intent that governs the crucible. His thoughts drift, fragmented and urgent, slipping between desire and dread. What does he become? The scholar knows the answer in the tremor of his hands and the sudden racing of his pulse. He is both creator and sacrifice, the architect of a moment that will outlast him, even as he risks being consumed by it. Knowledge exacts its price in sweat and singed flesh, in sleepless nights, and the haunting echo of every failure recorded in these walls. And yet, the temptation to see beyond the veil of human limitation is irresistible, a siren's song more compelling than the cold certainty of mortality. The candle gutters, its flame shivering as if caught between worlds. Smoke curls toward the rafters, tracing invisible lines in the dark, as though mapping a journey the scholar cannot yet comprehend. Outside, wind scratches at the stone, rattling loose frost and stirring the shadows, sending whispered warnings of the unforgiving night beyond the tower. The scholar does not flinch. He cannot. Every movement is necessary, every calculation a step closer to the precipice. And in the mercury, now trembling and alive, he glimpses the first signs of irreversible change. It is a transformation that promises power and peril in equal measure, a testament to the danger of reaching beyond what is human, beyond what is permitted. He hesitates, a fleeting moment when the world seems suspended, caught between the glow of the crucible and the darkness of the corners. This pause is not fear. It is a recognition that the forces he has summoned are no longer his to command. The room hums with potential energy, each particle of air charged, waiting for a single spark to shift the balance between creation and annihilation. In this fragile instant, he is more shadow than man, the walls reflecting his obsession back at him like a mirror that cannot lie. Outside, the frost continues its patient work, glinting in the pale moonlight, while inside, the alchemist's body begins to betray him. Fingers twitch involuntarily, veins pulse with unnatural rhythm, and beneath the skin, subtle shifts occur, responding to the chemical tumult he has wrought. He is aware, in the depths of his mind, that he is no longer merely observing. He is participating in an alchemy that touches the very essence of life. A shiver runs down his spine, not from cold, but from the realization that mastery and destruction are entwined in ways that cannot be undone. A whisper of sound catches his attention. The bird in its cage, still silent, watching, as if the creature alone perceives the boundary he is crossing. He smiles faintly, a gesture of recognition, before turning back to the crucible. The heat intensifies, the light shifting from orange to a molten silver, reflections dancing in the scholar's eyes. This is the threshold, a moment suspended between what was known and what is about to emerge. Every instinct screams for caution, yet every ambition demands continuation. He leans closer, inhaling the sharp scent of mercury and scorched metal, feeling it curl into his lungs, marking him irrevocably. And then, with a final, almost imperceptible quiver, the transformation begins in earnest. The mercury ripples, fissures appear in its surface, and the chamber hums as if acknowledging the act. The scholar's breath catches, a mix of triumph and terror, as he realizes the irrevocable nature of what he has wrought. He is both witness and participant, a soul caught between the limits of flesh and the possibilities of knowledge. Around him, shadows lean closer, flames flicker in salute or warning, and the frost outside etches intricate patterns on the stone, indifferent to human ambition. In this suspended moment, the world seems to hold its breath, waiting for the consequence that must inevitably follow. The scholar steps back, eyes still fixed on the molten, living surface before him, and feels the weight of eternity pressing into the chamber. He is caught in a delicate balance between creation and annihilation, between the light of revelation and the shadow of ruin. And as the candle dies with a soft sizzle, curling smoke tracing the rafters, he glimpses what has been lost and what may yet come, a silent testament to the peril of reaching beyond human limits, a whisper that knowledge, once touched, can never be unlearned. Outside, frost continues to glimmer in the cold light of dawn, and the bell from the monastery tolls again, each ring a reminder that the world moves on, indifferent to those who dare to challenge its boundaries. Inside the tower, the alchemist stands, transformed in ways he cannot yet comprehend, caught between mortality and the unknown. And in the silence that follows, only the faint hiss of chemicals and the distant cry of the bird mark the beginning of consequences that will unfold long after the candle has gone out. Moonlight slants through narrow lattice windows, slicing the darkness with pale, trembling fingers. On the work table below, vials glitter like fragments of a shattered constellation, their fragile curves catching the faint silver and refracting it into trembling rays. A scholar leans over a crucible, his shoulders curved as if bearing the weight of centuries, cheekbones hollowed by nights spent in fevered pursuit. He stirs the molten metal with a careful, almost ritualistic precision, watching as it shimmers, ripples, and exhales smoke that coils into iridescent spirals, curling toward the rafters like living specters. The air is thick with the scent of sulfur and scorched parchment, of spilled mercury that gleams in dim patches of lamplight, a metallic tang that clings stubbornly to the skin and lungs, an invisible testament to obsession. Outside, the wind wails against the stone tower in long, mournful gusts, rattling shutters and sending tremors through the skeletal frame of the building. Faint echoes drift from the cloister beyond, the slow toll of a distant bell, footsteps muffled by stone, and the whisper of cloaks brushing ancient floors. The scholar's hands, trembling yet steady, move as if in defiance of the world outside, each motion part of a fragile choreography aimed at breaching the boundaries of mortality. Every instrument, every scroll, every tarnished flask seems sacred, charged with the electricity of forbidden possibility. The tiny bird in its rusted cage flutters nervously, feathers bristling at sudden sparks that arc like lightning across the crucible surface. It senses something unseen, a tremor in the fabric of the chamber, a warning whispered by the shadows. A shiver snakes down the scholar's spine, an echo of a danger yet unnamed. His fingers stiffen, pulse quickens. His reflection in a copper basin ripples unnaturally, as if reality itself recoils from the act he performs. Yet he cannot stop. He is propelled by a force older than reason, the fevered need to touch the infinite, to wrest meaning from the elements themselves. Candle smoke drifts upward in lazy spirals, a silent witness to the rituals unfolding below. Shadows deepen and gather in the corners, stretching like dark fingers, hiding subtle, grotesque signs of mutation curling along the scholar's skin. Small veins blacken, eyes glimmer with a strange reflection of the crucible's light. Each minute is a battleground, every heartbeat a challenge issued to the natural order. The metals in the crucible sing under his touch, a soft, mournful melody that vibrates through the stone walls. Each shimmer, each flicker of flame, carries the weight of both hope and terror. He murmurs to himself in half-formed words, incantations of understanding, chants that seek to bend the laws of the world to a single will. The chamber hums with life, yet it is a life tethered to obsession. The ratcheting of gears in a hidden device, the scratch of quills across parchment, the metallic clink of instruments realigning, all punctuating the scholar's relentless focus. He reaches for a vial of quicksilver, the fluid sloshing over the rim as if eager to escape. Its silvery surface mirrors his own, but twisted. The eyes staring back are not just weary, they are warning. Outside, the wind grows louder, carrying the scent of cold stone and wet earth, pressing against the tower as if it wishes to intrude upon this chamber of secret transmutation. And yet, within, the scholar is impervious, mind sharpened to a single, impossible task. He pours the metal into a mold, watching it hiss, smoke, and swell with strange life. There's a brief, terrible beauty in the way the molten substance moves, like a creature awakening from deep slumber. The bird falls silent, wings folding against its cage, as if it senses the world itself bending. A fingernail darkens. A hair begins to shimmer with unnatural light. Pain gnaws at the edges of the scholar's awareness, but he endures it, driven by the ache to transcend the flesh. Hours pass, or perhaps moments, time of fragile illusion in the heat and glare of creation. His hands now carry small wounds, burns and cuts forgotten in the larger vision. The crucible glows, the metals inside breathing with a life of their own, and the room seems to tilt on an unseen axis. Shadows writhe as if alive, stretching into grotesque shapes across the walls, reflecting the scholar's own transformation. He pauses only briefly to catch his reflection in the copper basin, and the sight arrests him. The human and the unnatural merged in uncanny symmetry. His skin flickers with scales of silver, veins like threads of molten metal tracing along arms and neck. Breath hitches. His mind teeters between exhilaration and terror. And yet he continues, because the promise of revelation is too intoxicating, too essential to abandon. He whispers prayers to saints he no longer believes in, invoking protection from forces whose names he has long forgotten. The fire beneath the crucible flares, sparks leaping like tiny stars escaping their orbit, landing on parchments and instruments, setting the margins of reality ablaze. The smell of burning resin, scorched wood, and heated metal blends into a perfume of ambition and ruin. Each motion, each pour, each careful turn of a tool carries the weight of a world on the brink. A scholar poised at the precipice of mortality, creation, and damnation. In the final moments, as the metals settle and the smoke curls toward the rafters, there is a silence so complete it almost reverberates. The chamber holds its breath, the bird huddled in the cage, the shadows waiting. The scholar steps back, sweat clinging to his brow, eyes wide with a mixture of triumph and fear. His body trembles, not from cold, nor fatigue, but from the realization that what he has wrought may be beyond comprehension, beyond reversal. The room, once a sanctuary of learning and curiosity, now feels like a tomb lined with the remnants of ambition. Flickering candlelight revealing the fragile boundary between human and the unknown. Outside, the wind sighs through the tower, carrying with it the faint, distant chime of bells and the echo of footsteps that seem impossibly far away. And in the quiet, the scholar glimpses the first ripple of consequence, a shadow that moves without source, a glimmer in the copper basin that does not match his own, a pulse in the air heavier than before. He has crossed a line, and the world beyond the lattice windows waits, patient and inexorable. The laboratory is no longer merely a place of study. It is a threshold, a liminal space where knowledge and flesh, ambition and ruin intertwine. The bird flutters again, small wings brushing against iron, as if sensing the storm to come, while outside, the bells toll once more, slow and mournful, calling the scholar toward a destiny he may not survive.